Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host. Today we are talking top 30 private visits for the Giants. Why do these matter? Well, the Giants have selected 10 players in the last 3 draft classes from the top 30 visits. Those players that they've selected are Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Cordell Flott in 2022. Deonte Banks, JMS, Jalen Hyatt, and Trey Hawkins, all top 30 visits in 2023. And then last year, Neighbors, Drew Phillips, and Theo Johnson, all top 30 visits. Now, of these top 30 visits, one in each class has come in that first pick. So that's something that we know will happen. But as we look through this, we're going to profile these players, talk about our thoughts on these players, where we might consider them, where the Giants might be considering them as well, Nick. We're going to break this down offense and defense. Today's pod is just going to feature the offensive players who have been brought in for a top 30 visit. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Let's start with Shedeur Sanders, who was brought in for a top 30. The Giants have spent millions of hours on him. They have a private workout coming up for him. They were at his pro day with 70,000 people. Basically, every resource they can have put into Shedeur Sanders, they have. So I guess let's talk about them players wise. Maybe just, I know we did a profile on him, but just some of your thoughts on him as we head into draft day and your thoughts on selecting him at 3 overall, your thoughts on trading back into round 1 for him, things of that nature.
Yeah, I want to say we've covered a lot of this, all those questions. I don't necessarily want the Giants to trade back into round 1 because I don't really believe in Shedeur Sanders as someone who could be a top 15 consistent quarterback in the National Football League. That doesn't mean I don't think he can start. I do think he could be a starting quarterback who can keep an offense in rhythm, a starting quarterback that Brian Daboll can work with, a starting quarterback who has some limitations when it comes to his physical traits, when it comes to his ability to be pinpoint accurate down the football field and really deliver throws where he's throwing guys open down the football field, all those out. And then there's the whole, he's Deion Sanders' kid, but he does not play like it. Just to be fair, like he's not an overly athletic player. I think he's going to struggle escaping the rush. If he's going to maximize his potential, which he does have, he has to play within the pocket. He has to win from within the pocket. And he has to realize that he's not going to be able to outrun NFL players because he could hardly outrun Big 12 defenders. And that's a problem that I have with Shedeur Sanders. And I don't think he's worth the third overall pick in the draft when you are going to be passing up on either a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. So that's where I'm at with Shedeur Sanders. Again, I could see a path to success for him, but I think a lot of things need to necessarily go right for Shedeur Sanders to reach that path, to get onto that path and to be consistent down that path. And I think the infrastructure around him also needs to be set in place. But I love his toughness. I love his intelligence. I love his ability to be a distributor, a point guard for that offense. And I think he would fit in very well on a West Coast timing-based, rhythm-based offense, which Brian Daboll has West Coast concepts for sure. I do think he wants to add a level of verticality, which Shedeur Sanders isn't terrible at, but I don't think that's necessarily his strength either. So I would not support, I don't want to say I would not support. If the Giants select Shedeur Sanders at 3, I'm not going to be over the moon happy. I'm not going to be like, yeah, we got our, but I'm going to say, I'm going to trust Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll's much smarter than me. I'm going to trust that Brian Daboll, a quarterback coach, is going to be able to be successful with this player. I do think there are some limiting factors with him, but I would trust the process. I would Sam Hinkie and trust the process if that selection is made. I would rather them go with Carter or Hunter. That's me. But I don't necessarily want the Giants to trade more assets up into the first round. And again, maybe it depends on where he falls, but that's because I don't really believe in the upside and the ceiling of this player. So that's where I'm at with Shedeur Sanders. I think we've probably went over this for a few times now, so I don't mean to be redundant, but let's just like stamp it on the paper now. But again, if he's a Giant, I'm going to be a big supporter of him. I hope the egg falls all over my face. I hated the Daniel Jones pick. I wanted Daniel Jones to work out in week 3 of 2019. I was like, yeah, man, this is great. I'm an idiot. I don't know shit. This is awesome. But my evaluation of him ended up being correct, unfortunately. And here we are like 6 years later, and we're still suffering the negative impact of that. But yeah, that's my overall assessment of Shedeur. What about you?
Yeah, and first I want to apologize to anyone listening for the construction going on in the background. It's just a never-ending nightmare. I don't even own the house. I rent it, so this is nothing of value to me, but it's what I have to deal with. But I promise it will never be as bad as 2 months ago when I was using my mom's laptop because mine was broken and her iMessage I couldn't figure out and just kept dinging. And people have texted me about that episode for a while, Nick. So it can't be as bad as that. As far as Sanders goes, Nick, I think the big disconnect here is that Okay, look, I'll start with the good things. The good things I like is he's a tough player. He had the second best completion rate, Nick, against pressure of all quarterbacks in this class. That's something good. I think he understands pressure. He's dealt with it a lot.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE.
So the idea would be you get him in a system that's not the Colorado system, and you could start to see the anticipatory passes, the big vertical shots, and just different, because you can watch Colorado and understand why Nick and I just watch 5-6 games that tape and understand why we're a bit underwhelmed. It's a system that doesn't look like an NFL system. And in addition to that, he also had the most yards after the catch from all receivers. Over 55% of his passing yards were after the catch. And you could say, look, again, that's because he's leading receivers into space. He's throwing with anticipation. But you watch the tape and you don't see as much of that as you want to see. You see more of these players making individual plays, these individual players after the catch or on these quick hitting screens. We talked about it on the Sanders profile, Nick. There were a lot of screens we watched where it's just kind of college screen, right? Shermer calls it. They get the ball into space, these playmakers, and these flow, and the linebackers and safeties can't flow to it in time. And there's just some gap for a guy to get vertical, plant his foot, and go. That's just never going to happen at the NFL level. So your hope is get him into a different system. And that toughness, that anticipation and accuracy will show up. Though on tape right now, it's very underwhelming as far as what Nick and I have seen. We don't see the accuracy people talk of. We think he's generally accurate, not pinpoint accurate. We don't see the anticipation people talk of. There's just not a lot of examples of NFL anticipatory throws. So throw out the tape and just go on a projection. So now you're projecting, Nick, all the mental stuff. That's what you have to do with Sanders, because physically he's a small quarterback. He's just 6'2", so a little over 200. He's not athletic. He doesn't have a lot of straight line speed. Doesn't have a lot of lateral agility. He doesn't have an explosive arm. It's an over-the-top nice delivery, and it's excellent, and it's taught well, and the mechanics are strong. But when he has to go off platform and generate from torque from the lower half, it's not there. Throwing to the left, balls die, balls bounce. So there's no explosive arm, and how's that going to play in MetLife in the windy, wintry conditions? Physically speaking and traits-wise, there's a lot to question from a ceiling standpoint with him. So I guess that's where I'm at with him. If they draft him, like you said, I'll get on board with it. I get on board with all these, and it's clearly they believe he can be better in a different system. So Sanders, that's our first guy. He's been in for a top 30 visit. Next guy we get to is Tyler Shuck, the quarterback out of Louisville, Nick, who has not only gotten a top 30, but also a private workouts, the double dip for the Giants. They want both. Shadable has said these private workouts mean everything to me. So get into a little bit of your thoughts on Tyler Shuck and just what he can be and where you might be comfortable with the Giants taking him.
Yeah, we touched on Shuck when it comes to or on the mailbag show, but when it comes to just arm talent, being able to make all the throws, being able to change your arm slot, touch, pacing on the throws, over the top delivery, throwing guys open, outside the number success, middle of the field success, seam success. Tyler Shuck has all of that. And as I said on the mailbag show, a lot of the issues with Tyler Shuck is the fact that he was in college as long as Van Wilder was in college. He was there for literally 7 years, 3 different schools. He was the backup to Justin Herbert at Oregon. Texas Tech, he spent all 3 of his seasons there injured, unfortunately. All of them were broken bones, though. Broken collarbone twice, and then a broken fibula in his leg. All happened in September, so there's not a ton of tape. And then he goes to Louisville for his final year of eligibility, and he has a lot of success at Louisville. And him and Ja'Cory Brooks, the former Alabama standout, the kid, well, he didn't really have a lot of success at Alabama, but he was a 5-star recruit, I want to say, coming out of like Florida or something like that. He might have been an IMG Academy kid. That's regardless of the fact. Anyways, I end up going and diverting into different directions here. But when it comes to Tyler Shuck, I just want to bank on those physical tools. I'm comfortable banking on that at 65. I don't necessarily want that at 34, but if the Giants and Dable felt comfortable, it's similar to Sanders. It's like, I would trust it. I'm not going to throw a fit if that's the direction that they go, because I'm not too concerned about the fact that he is 26 because he has that experience under his belt. And I saw enough processing and ability to go through his progressions and make quick decisions and also have success while he's escaping outside of the pocket, a little bit of creativity to him throughout his 2024 tape that make me say there's a lot that I'm rolling the dice on here that makes me be like, I think I'm going to get the numbers that I want to some degree. I just don't know exactly what the I don't know. Like, I think he can be consistent with a lot of the aspects of his game that he has displayed. So I don't want to take him at 34 just because I'm getting greedy here. But if the Giants did and they believed him, like, I shouldn't be upset about that, right? Because I am banking on something that I also, or because Dable's banking on something that I also see, which are those physical traits. So I think it's an interesting thought experiment, because it's like, yeah, well, if you want him at 65, you should also want him at 34, maybe, right? If you are as high on him as I suggest, and I am. So that's kind of where I'm at. I would not freak out if the Giants took him at 34, because it seems like we should, but I don't know, Dan. I turned on his tape. I watched, I think, 3.5, 4 games. I was pretty impressed, man. So if you think that it's not just an outlier because it was a 1-year thing, this could be a guy the Giants could roll the dice on. And by all accounts, the Giants are interested in this player.
You were impressed by his tape. I was impressed by his tape, Nick. On February 11th, I tweeted my hot take of the draft is Tyler Shuck might be the best pure passer in this class. And then I saw yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, I forgot who was on, an NFL GM spoke to whoever was on, I think it was Peter Schrager, and said, Shuck is the best pure passer in this draft. And that's what a GM thinks. And according to Schrager, it was a smart GM for whatever that means, Nick. Also, he's Greg Cosell's number 2 quarterback in this class. So it's not crazy for you to like the tape and for you to like the projection. And why do you like the projections? For reasons that I like it too. He's got physical traits that actually project to the NFL, right? A pure passing trait, right? He gets the ball out on time. There's actual pinpoint placement in his tape. It's an explosive arm, Nick. He, along with Cam Ward, was a catalyst for home run plays. He tied Cam Ward for 4th in FBS with 7 completions of 50 yards or more in 2024. And on play action passes, these are some of his best throws on tape. He had a 12-0 touchdown interception ratio, best in the class. And that shows, what can you do with him at an NFL level if you design him on these big play action plays where he's under center. He uses his big frame, 6'5". He's the only one in this class who's actually tall. We want tall quarterbacks. You want frame. He's the only one with a frame, and he's athletic, and he throws off platform. You see him rolling to his left, and he can make those throws. Why, Nick? Well, he was a standout baseball player in high school. I've talked about this a lot in past years on the podcast. Mahomes, Kyler Murray, some of these quarterbacks who have had success, former baseball players, because when you're a baseball player, you have to make these off-platform throws, not just over-the-top motion, not that clean Daniel Jones always has to be over the top. You have to do some things like this and get the ball out from different arm angles, and that's something that he's done. He actually played high school baseball with Brock Purdy, which I thought was interesting. Funny note about Tyler Shuck that I have in here, this is from Dane Brugler. His younger brother played college football and finished his college football career before Tyler, which is just hilarious. But this is the life he was dealt. He got injured the first game twice. He had to transfer to 3 schools. This is going to be held against him, but there are good things about him. You mentioned Ja'Cory Brooks. Ja'Cory Brooks, this is a quote from Dane Brugler. He said he was always in the film room. That was the first thing I noticed about him when he transferred over, that Shuck was always in the film room. It shows up. That's why we like the tape. Like, you see him getting the ball out on time with pinpoint placement as the receiver gets out of his break. The ball is there, and he reads through. You can watch him go through regression. Some of these quarterbacks you watch are just staring to one side of the field. That's not the case with him. And you could talk about some of the stats with him, but he's a big throwaway quarterback. He led, I believe, the NCAA in throwaways. If he doesn't like what he sees and he goes through regression, he ditches the ball. He doesn't take the sacks. The sacks kill your drives. I like that. Now, that leads to some problems, Nick, where he doesn't want to take a sack at all costs, and he'll just kind of throw the ball up there into a space where he thinks it'll go incomplete. And then sometimes it could be in a zone where it could get intercepted, and you see all these low lights circulating Twitter, which I totally get. But I kind of like that he doesn't take sacks that kill drives, and like he's looking to get the ball out.
I have that in my notes. He has panic throws.
He does.
There are times where he is falling away from, like, the contact's coming, and he'll fall away and he'll try to just the thing that's like surprising with Shuck is he can step into throws and use his entire body and the torque and use the ground to his advantage to deliver an accurate, hard throw with a ton of velocity. But he can also just kind of flick his wrist and it also flies. Similar to Jalen Milroe. It's a lot of arm talent that's within their body. And if they can fix their mechanics, and Shuck's mechanics are much better than Milroe's. I'm not trying to group him in there. But if they can play a little bit more consistently with their feet and everything's in conjunction, like you're talking about like a really like high level NFL arm with both Shuck and Milroe. I don't see that with Sanders. And that's one of my problems with Shedeur Sanders, not to bring it back to him. But yeah, no, like, look, I'd rather not the Giants go 34. But again, like I'm like calling myself out here. I'm like, well, if you believe in him, maybe you should be okay with that, right?
Yeah, you could make that case. I less so want 34. I'm interested in now in general, Nick, in the idea of trading back from 34, picking up 2 second-round picks, using one of them on Chuck, and then getting a player a little worse than what you get at 34 at the same position, but still a good player in the depth of this class. I really think the Giants should be very, very open to trading back from 34 if they want one of these quarterbacks in round 2, whether that be Shuck or Milroe or anyone else we're going to get to on this post today. But yeah, just to wrap up Tyler Shuck, he actually engineered an offense that scored 36.6 points per game in 2024. Really high-powered offense for Louisville's standards. And I really do think that working with working with Brom helps him. Like, I think that's led to him really improving his mechanics, getting the ball out, understanding timing of a passing offense, which I think could help him in the next level. I'm interested in Shuck. I don't know if I want him at 34, but I'm interested in Shuck. Let's talk about another quarterback who they've brought in here, Nick. And now this has been confirmed from Pat Leonard. And we haven't talked that much about this quarterback, but it's been confirmed from Pat Leonard that it was a top 30 and a private visit. And that's Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. So what are your thoughts on Jackson Dart?
I think we've talked a decent amount about Jackson Dart. He has a lot of physical traits similar to Tyler Shuck. I think Shucks are a lot better than Jackson Darts, but Darts still has an NFL arm talent, can put touch, has good velocity, throws it deep. I would say solid to good rate as well. He plays in a offense that is just not translatable. It's an RPO heavy spread offense where he has predetermined looks, and a lot of it is based on quick reads at the mesh point with RPO, read half the side of the field, put a defender in conflict. If that defender reacts one way, you hand the football off, reacts another way, you throw the slant, you throw the glance, you throw the bubble, you throw the screen, you throw the vert. If it's a one-on-one matchup, the safety doesn't flow. And it's all stuff that Dart had to process in the moment, but these are all just packaged plays that are easily digestible and not necessarily translatable because you don't have the space in the NFL that you have in college football, and you're going up against supreme athletes all of the time in the NFL, and you're not doing that in college football. So that's why Lane Kiffin's offense works in college football, but you never really see a quarterback translate from Lane Kiffin's offense to the NFL because of the lack of space and the elite athletes on the defensive side of the football. So I find him to be a difficult evaluation if I'm just going to be perfectly transparent, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm not going to know about Jackson Dart just from watching his tape because he's playing in this gimmicky type of offense. But I can see why someone would like him. He seems to have a moxie about him that I appreciate. He's a physical runner. He's a good athlete. He's a better athlete than Shedeur Sanders. He's a better athlete than Tyler Shuck. He's not Jalen Milroe out there, but few are. I wouldn't say he's necessarily Cam Ward either, but he's in that conversation athletically. And I like how he can run, lower his shoulder through a linebacker, get up, and he like starts celebrating, right? I like that type of mentality, but I don't know if he's going to be able to process things mentally once he gets to the NFL. And there's just no way for me to know that really. That's something I would have to project, and that's a big risk. So Dable would know that, getting him into the room, at least somewhat, right? Like you would hope. So again, if he were to take the risk on a guy like Dart, I would have to trust Dable, like, hey, but I'm hesitant, man. I'm very hesitant because I don't want to get a quarterback in here who's my first read's not there. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, I'm sacked. Like that. I don't want that to be the Giants' future.
I think you broke that down perfectly. He's the toughest evaluation of any of these quarterbacks for me as well, because of what we've talked about. And I think it's important to note when you're projecting on traits and you're projecting, or when you're projecting anticipation, things of that nature, you just don't know what you're going to get. And there are too many examples, I think, of him scrambling, I think 48 plus times where his eyes just drop after that first read isn't open and he just goes. There's also examples of that read being open and he just takes it, right? And he doesn't, a lot of the concepts they run Ole Miss, he knows where to go with the ball, I think, before it's snapped, which is great, I guess, but it's not going to work at the NFL level. That Ole Miss system doesn't translate, and defenses rotate a lot more, and they make things a lot more difficult for a quarterback. So I think it's possible he's like the biggest projection of all in this class, and he could be not at all ready to start. He's 21 years old. He has good traits. I find his arm talent to be overrated, Nick, by people who have talked it up. Personally, I think it's fine. I think it's good. I've heard people say it's like Josh Allen-esque or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I
this
think
is
it's
kind of like a Josh Allen prospect or something. I'm like, I don't know what world you're living in that this is anywhere close to a Josh Allen prospect, because it's not. And there are some big time throws where you're like, that is good arm talent. That's a great throw. He put that ball in perfect pinpoint placement. It's a tough throw to make. It's deep down the field. The timing is right. There's also sometimes on his tape, we talked about this with Shuck, where there's like those times where he's trying to get rid of the ball and some like, what are you doing throws. I think Jackson Dart has those, not even on when he's trying to get rid of the ball, just like, I don't know what you're doing there. The pocket was fine. You hitched into the throw. You just threw it into a terrible area of the field. Like, what were you reading out there? The Florida game you brought up, that's one I watched where it's just like, what the hell happened at the end of that game? So I just, for me, he's one of the ones I'm least interested in of all the guys at 34 that's in discussion. I certainly don't want to trade back into round one for this player. I understand he's 21. He's tough. He's physical. He can run and throw. There's upside to any prospect who's like that. It's just not a gamble I want to make.
Yeah, I understand why. Again, but I got to trust that Brian Dable will be able to get this kid on the whiteboard, since they had a private workout and they did work out, and try to really find out and investigate how this guy processes and if he can retain the copious amounts of notes and adjustments that Brian Dable has throughout his offense. So I have to just trust Dable on that one. But yeah, this was a tougher evaluation, one of the toughest evaluations quarterback wise, just because he is so highly regarded and he plays in an offense where it's just like, how translatable is any of this shit? I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe if it's not, though, Nick, like you said, Dable says, I don't care how untranslatable this offense was. I believe when I get him in my offense, he's shown me enough on the whiteboard in our private meetings, in the top 30 and whatever it may be, that he can pick this up fast. And so you got to trust him, like you said. The next guy is two more quarterbacks they brought in for top 30s, Nick. Jalen Milroe, who we've discussed a little bit. Maybe you want to give one more quick overview on him.
Yeah, quick overview. I think this guy could be the best rushing quarterback in the National Football League if he can figure out how to deliver the ball accurately. His eyes, his hips, his shoulders, his feet, they are not congruent whatsoever, and it leads to a huge accuracy issues on simple throws, on deep throws. But again, the arm talent is there. It's flashed. It's not necessarily as consistent as Shuck, but it's flashed, where I've seen him hit cover two hole shots to the field, where he puts the football towards the sideline. I've seen it. So I know it's there. I've seen him layer it over linebackers before safeties. I've seen it, just not nearly consistent enough. And he'll miss layups. And it's frustrating when he misses those layups. So I would say overall, there is arm talent. It needs to be unlocked. He needs to figure out how to be more fluid and balanced as a passer to ensure that the balls are a little bit more accurate. He had like 29 fumbles. He has small hands. Don't love any of that. I think he has a floor of being a dynamic offensive weapon, a Justin Fields type of runner. I think Fields is a better passer overall right now, but Milroe has the arm talent similar to a Justin Fields. So if you could fix the and I don't know and I don't, from a processing standpoint, Milroe was definitely verklempt against Oklahoma, so they were able to get to him. But if you go back to 2023, there was some good processing there where he's looking guys off, using his eyes to his advantage. I don't know why it necessarily didn't translate consistently in 2024, because he did seem a little bit overwhelmed at times. So he's a little bit developmental, a little bit of a project. But I can understand why a team would want to buy into his physical, just tantalizing traits, because it's rare. It's rare. It's elite level type of traits as a rusher. But man, you really need to fix him from a mechanics standpoint, upper and lower body.
Yeah, and I've already said, Nick, and we've talked about this, I'll be okay, honestly, if the Giants don't take a quarterback in the first two rounds, because I think the players at 34-3 are too good to pass up on. But if they want to trade back and get 2 picks in the second round, trade back from 34, or if they just end up taking this player, Jalen Milroe, 34, I'll say this, Nick, outside of day one, we finish day one with Carter or Hunter. This will be the quarterback I'm most excited about. This will be the quarterback that I can get behind the most for an upside pie in the sky idea, thinking about the offseason for the next 3 months. Like, oh yeah, we have Jalen Milroe. What could he eventually become? And the reason is he has arm talent in addition to being that dynamic runner. And just to give you an idea of how dynamic of a runner he is, 20% of his carries last year resulted in 10 yards or more. That's insane for a quarterback. That's insane for a running back. 12 rushing touchdowns of 10 plus yards in 2024, most by a quarterback ever. Lamar Jackson 11 in 2016 and 2017. He also created explosives in the passing game. 16 touchdowns, averaged 36.6 yards per touchdown. And that's the difference for me between him and Fields. I think he's a better vertical thrower than Fields. I think Fields line drives his vertical throws. Jalen Milroe
I think
puts
that's
effort
fair.
on his vertical throws. And
That's
you can
fair.
watch these receivers dropping passes that they shouldn't drop, and then they catch them because they're good throws. And so I think he's already a pretty good vertical thrower. PFF had him graded as the best passer in the class on 40+ yard throws, air yard throws. But there are issues. Fields is a better layup thrower than him, right? Fields can keep a pass game going together. He's going to have to be developed, but as far as traits go, man, he's built right frame wise. He's got explosive traits as a runner and explosive arm talent. He does not need to hitch into throws. He does not need to have a clean pocket. He can just fire it off that back foot with arm talent alone. That's important to me in the NFL because you're not going to get clean pockets all the time. You're not going to be able to just hitch into every freaking throw. You don't get that a lot. And, one SEC scout told this to, I believe, Nate Tice or Dane Brugler, and it was interesting. They're like, when it comes to Dart or Milroe, it's Milroe any and every day for them. He's like, it's simple as this. Who is harder to game plan against as a defensive coordinator? And that's, I think he talked to a defense coordinator. And it's like Milroe by far. No one's game planning against Jackson Dart, and no one's really looking at it like that. But Milroe is a tough one. Also, two-time team captain. He graduated cum laude with a business degree and also achieved a master's degree in sports management. He also won the academic Heisman, the William V. Campbell Award trophy. So he's someone who clearly has his head on straight as well, and is somebody you can rely on for that. So if you're asking me, if they're not going to take a quarterback day one, this will probably be the one I'm most excited about. Now let's get to the final quarterback they brought in for a top 30. It's Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. We actually haven't touched much on McCord. I'll be honest, Nick, I've only watched 3 games of McCord, but I've watched some obviously cut-ups and have a decent idea of who he is as a quarterback, and watched a ton of Ohio State the year before. So, just live games. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we'll circle back on Kyle McCord because I am going to watch him in this next week coming up. I will say I watched a decent amount of him when I was studying Marvin Harrison Jr., watching Ohio State back in 2023. Little rough, but I heard he really bounced back again as the Syracuse quarterback. So I'm going to circle back with that one.
Yeah, I'll probably come back to it when you come back to it. Just some overall thoughts on him. Decent distributor of the football. I think he understands pre-snap where it would go with the ball, and he took advantage of that a lot at Syracuse in that system. I don't know exactly if that will translate to the NFL level. I thought, this was an interesting one, a throwback for any Badgers fans. I heard Nate Tice compare him to Scott Tolzien, former Badgers quarterback, who was the quarterback when I was there, which I totally get that comp. It's that distributor quarterback who's like looking pre-snap to find solutions and is making a lot of the right solutions post-snap. No explosive traits for him, not a good athlete, not a great arm. So, it is what it is on that front. If the Giants select him, I think it would be with the idea of being a long-term quarterback too for them. All right, let's get to some other positions they brought in, Nick. Start with a really interesting player who could only be in the mix at 34 if he's even there. They'll never get him any further back than that. It's Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. What did you see when watching Hampton?
Oh, geez, man. Omarion Hampton is one of my draft crushes. And I know the Giants aren't going to have a shot at him, nor do I really want the Giants taking a running back at 34. But as we talked about on the mailbag, Joe Shane may have a different idea because he's bringing in a lot of running backs who will more than likely not be there at 65. But maybe the Giants will trade. We'll have to wait and see. That's why the draft is exciting. But holy shit, does Omarion Hampton have just an imposing size with this chiseled frame, quick accelerator, burst through the line of scrimmage, will run through your face, agile enough to also avoid you, excellent vision behind the line of scrimmage, can use patience, doesn't need patience, will run through you. Again, man, I love these true 3-down backs that are just violent. In my report, I have this written down: violence in his runs. Very difficult to bring down. All of those are very accurate ways to just sum him up. And then he also has that natural feel to understand defensive flow and then hit one cut backside. Nobody's there. And then he has the acceleration and the overall athletic ability to outrun players at 6'1", 220 pounds. So from just a vision standpoint, from a 3-down standpoint, he can pass protect. He can be that solid check down option for you. You need him to run zone. He's good enough for that. You need him to run power gap counter. Definitely can thrive in that environment as well. Can get skinny at the line of scrimmage and slip through a lot of traffic and congested areas. Eliminates defensive backs' poor angles as well with that quick acceleration in second gear. And he's a long strider too. So like I absolutely loved Omarion Hampton. He was one of my favorite valuations in this draft class.
You got to him early, Nick, and you told me about him. You're like, take a look at Omarion Hampton. You're going to love this prospect. And I did as well. And some of the reasons I loved him are the ones you went over, but I think we can get into some other stuff. I think he's a better receiver than people realize, and he projects as a better receiver at the next level. They used him on pivot routes. They used him on a variety of routes, and he only had 2 drops on 80 career targets. So he has that to his profile as well. In addition to that, he does not fumble the football. He only had 1 fumble in 2024. So now you have the ball production. You have the receiving upside, no drops. He's a workhorse, 25 or more touches in 12 games in 2024. He broke weightlifting records in high school. He broke 10.7 second on the 100-meter. 20.9 on the long jump. He does everything, explosive jumps, strong lower half. He's essentially a player that, to me, that reminds me a lot, Nick, in his running style of Jonathan Taylor, a little bit lower center of gravity and much better after contact. But that's what I was reminded most of Taylor at Wisconsin. And Taylor at Wisconsin had 3 of the most dominant seasons you'll ever have as a running back from a production standpoint. Ended up being somebody who should have been taken 20, 25 picks earlier in the class. I could see Hampton having a similar profile where he ends up going, Nick, at like 30s and maybe a little earlier because this class doesn't have that much talent up top. But people are like, oh, he should have just been an earlier pick. He's a no-brainer evaluation. So look, if the Giants take him at 34, it's a little early for us for a running back, just given the class, but I'd be interested in it. And I know you would be too, Nick.
I absolutely would be. Yep.
Yeah. And that's crazy to say. We don't really typically follow that direction, but he's just too good of a talent.
Yeah, it really depends on who's around though. Again, but like I would be excited because of talent. Like I was excited when I was mad when the Giants took Saquon Barkley in 2018, but I was also like, yo, I loved Saquon Barkley. I just knew it. Like I just felt like it wasn't the right allocation of assets.
Yeah, and it's different at 34 versus 2. We, or whatever it may be. All right, next guy they brought in, Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, who actually played most of his career at Ole Miss as their workhorse, came in and shared a role with Tre'Davion Henderson. 3 years of high-level production with him. What are your thoughts on Judkins?
Woo, downhill physical runner, plays with a controlled aggression, excellent contact balance. Didn't really have that make a miss in a phone booth type of skill. He's more of the I'm going to run through your face, which we were talking about with Omari and Hampton. I feel like Judkins is maybe a little bit more of a little bit stiffer, but he still has a little bit of elusiveness for a guy of his size. Because again, he is 6 foot, 221 pounds, runs low behind his pads. Another guy with true 3 down upside. Believe he has efficient footwork behind the line of scrimmage, speed, physicality, downhill rusher. Like I said a little bit earlier, has the burst through the hole. I think his vision is solid overall. Loves to deliver the pain, excellent play strength, willing pass protector, still needs a little bit of work. Henderson took a lot of those snaps in 2024. Always going to fall through contact, still just 21 years old, had 5 touchdowns in 3 games during the playoff push that helped the Buckeyes win the Natty this past year. Didn't really fumble all that often. Overall, I appreciated the physical nature. This is the type of running back I think the Giants should pursue and should add. Is a Quinshon Judkins, is a Kyle Monangai, is an Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State, one of these bigger, even though Ollie Gordon's, and we'll get into him a little later, not necessarily the most physical. He doesn't play to his physicality. Quinshon Judkins does play to his size. So I've always respected and appreciated that about his game.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting player. I mean, you look at the production, he's had 50 touchdowns in 42 career games, average over 100 scrimmage yards in his career. But then you can look at it and wonder, because he's faced more light boxes than any running back in this class, because that's what happens when you're on the Ole Miss offense in that Lane Kiffin system. He's allowed a pressure rate of 9.5% as a pass protector, only more than 40 pass protection reps in 1 season. He's not very tested there. Like you said, Tre'Davion Henderson handled that role at Ohio State. So there's some questions about that. His avoided tackle rate, this is a stat Jacob Gibbs gave me, 40.1% against non-power 4 opponents, just 23.6% against power 4 opponents. Really feasted against those bad teams. Definitely like his profile, like his age, like his athleticism, like his size. He's someone I would consider, but someone I'd more so be interested in at 65 than anywhere else. And even then, I think I'd pass to kind of get to our next prospect, Nick, we're going to get to, who came in for a top 30. So they've done Judkins as a running back. They've done Hampton. And this prospect that I want to get to is Cam Scatabo, who I have decided, Nick, is my favorite running back value in this class. It was him or Harvey for me, but there's a reason why, as I'll get to in a moment, why Scatabo has taken that reign. But let me hear about what you thought about when you watched Cam Scatabo.
Oh man, he's another one. He's another one who's one of my favorite guys to evaluate. Just a dangerous one-cut runner with this elite jump cut. Not necessarily the best athlete in the class. Won't really have those I'm going to break away and run away from the defense type of player. But holy shit, dude, just from a vision and short area quickness standpoint, he can just make guys miss around the line of scrimmage in space, tough as nails, has this excellent combination of the lateral agility, the short area quickness, along with a physical brute style of running that results in him falling forward through contact consistently. I love how he angles his body too. That's another like aspect of him. When he's approaching the hole, he can angle his body to mitigate contact and force these missed tackle attempts by these defenders, because he's hard to bring down in and of himself because he's like 5'11", 5'10", like 220 pounds. He's a thick built guy. So I appreciated his tape when I went through it at Arizona State. I don't know where he's going to get drafted because he's not this elite athlete, but I think this is a player who is going to be a fan base's favorite, right? He's going to be a fan base's favorite. I think he has 3 down upside as well, and he can pass protect, and he can be a receiver. And he just like broke records at Arizona State for his receiving and for his rushing ability. He was a first-team All-American this past year, was a runner-up, I think, in the Heisman, or I think he was 5th in the Heisman voting this past year as well. So, damn, dude, I respected his game, and he was one of my favorite evaluations as well. Different player than Omarion Hampton. Omarion Hampton is much more flashy, much more holy shit. But when you watch Cam Skattebo, you just become very appreciative of his potential and what he can offer in offense. And again, has that like, oh man, fans are going to absolutely love this dude. And that's kind of my evaluation on him.
Yeah, and he's actually even 5'9", he'd measured at, so even smaller, which I think works to his favor. You watch it, it helps his running style because he gets so low. He runs with such a low center of gravity. That helps create all that yards after contact and force missed tackles. And he's so freaking aggressive once he gets going, like he doesn't want to go down with that low center of gravity. He's just fighting and fighting and fighting, and it's so exciting to watch. I think he is kind of what's interesting about all these guys they've brought in, with the exception of Judkins, but even Judkins fits it during his time with Ole Miss. Gordon, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Omarion Hampton, and Skattebo, they all proved at the college level, Nick, that they can be workhorses. They can be their entire offense. Skattebo was the entire Arizona State offense. He was a receiver. He even had plays where he was a quarterback and made throws. As a receiver, he had the 3rd highest yards per route run. He was absolutely dominant as the entire offense. Like, you're getting a guy, I think, at 99 or 105 because, again, he's only 5'9". He's smaller. He ran a bad 40-yard dash, and he's not as tested in pass protection. So, like, those are all reasons he'll probably drop to 99 or 105, where the Giants are picking in round 4 at the end of round 3. But he's also a guy who had 10 straight 100-plus yard games of scrimmage to end the season. Dominated those games, was his entire offense, was in the passing game, in the running game, was the reason why they won games at Arizona State. He has literally in 2024, he had a higher single season yards per route run rate than anything Barkley or Jahmyr Gibbs ever did. And those were supposed to be some of the better receiving backs coming out, specifically Gibbs. He was their offense, and just somebody who I loved watching. I think Skattebo is one of the easiest bet, and he's 23 years old, turning 24, so that's another knock against him as far as why he'll drop. I think one of the easiest evals in the class and one of the easiest value picks in the class by far. I would love if the Giants draft this player. I would say more than any player in this class, I would want them to draft him because I believe the value is so strong here.
Yeah, let's get on to Ollie Gordon II, the other running back that the New York Giants ended up bringing in. Dude, this is a guy, Oklahoma State. He had a phenomenal 2023 year where he was a unanimous first team All-American. I think he finished, what was it, like 5th or 6th in the Heisman Trophy. Just this guy who everyone was like, oh man, this guy's going to blow up. And then this last year, it wasn't necessarily as respectable, although he still averaged 4.6 yards per carry, but he only had 880 yards, whereas in 2023, he had over 1,700 yards rushing with 21 touchdowns. The guy was an absolute maniac. 6'1", 226 pounds. It's a little odd, though. I'm not sure if you got to watch Ollie Gordon II yet, but he plays a little bit more finesse than he does than you would expect for a guy of his size. But he has build-up speed, long legs. Once he gets into the open, it's just like a horse galloping, dude, where it's just like he's striding out, right? And Oklahoma State specifically this season, but even in 2023, they used him so frequently on screens and got him into space. And his vision in that area, excellent. His vision behind the line of scrimmage, I think it could use some work. But overall, this is probably somebody who's going to fall to day 3. And if he came out last year, probably wasn't going to be the case, right? Still a young player. He's only 21 years old. He won't turn 22 until January. Runs a bit high, little high cut. So he's not as laterally gifted as he is straight line. But I came away appreciative of his tape. I think I love his stiff arm, bro. I think he does a good job pressing the line of scrimmage, forcing linebackers to commit, and he thrived in power gap counter concepts, which we know Brian Dable also loves to use.
Yeah, I love it, Nick. Ollie Gordon is a prospect who really, really grew on me as I started watching him and diving into his profile. You talked about the passing game upside. He had 0 drops in 2024. I think something with him that really stood out to me was, like you said, once he gets in open space, those long strides, long-legged strides, and the galloping, he really can get out and beat angles at the second and third level, surprisingly, for someone like him. I agree he's not the strongest player. He doesn't play to his size at all times.
I think he could, but he'd rather like try to make you miss. And I'm like, dude, just lower your shoulder. That's a safety. You could take that on, you know?
But like you said, he took another guy that fits the billing of a workhorse guy in 2023, took over that offense, was that entire offense, over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns in a single season. Didn't happen this past year, but overall, a player who's, again, really grew on me. One thing that I've had now with this service that I use for tape this year, an extra service that I got, is they have these little like set cut-ups, Nick, where you can just watch like a player's pass protection or something like that. And I watched him in pass pro. I thought he was really good in that regard too, and uses his size well there and can be like a plus player there. So I think he's a good receiver, no drops. I think he can be a pass pro plus pass pro player, and he can handle the workload. If you get that at pick 99 or 105, that's such a rare like thing you can get in a draft class. You know what I mean? Like, you're just not usually going to get a player who had a season like he had in 2023 and projects the way that he projects. I really think he's somebody who's really jumped onto my radar fast and somebody who I'd be very interested in. And I didn't expect that going into it. When they first, brought him in, I was like, I don't know about him because he had such a poor season, but now I'm definitely more interested in him as we move forward. And one more back we need to get to, we forgot. They brought him for a top 30, Caleb Johnson, the Iowa back. This is probably the most surprising. He fits the billing of what we talked about, the workhorse. He handles the whole load, but seems to Nick and I as best fit for him will be an outside zone, wide zone scheme. Giants are not necessarily running that right now. They'll mix it in at times. What are your thoughts on Caleb Johnson?
Caleb Johnson, I liked Caleb Johnson, 6'1", 224 pounds, has that powerful frame. Again, long limbed, evenly distributed weight throughout his body. As I said through the mailbag episode, he reminded me of a better, more precise, and more decisive Kerryon Johnson. That's what his running style reminded me of. Now, I think he has an excellent feel inside the tackles, understands tempo, footwork, baiting, and timing, and using good overall burst to attack defenders' angles to make them miss. Reliable pass catcher who showcased his hands by catching away from his frame on multiple different occasions. He's still young, 21 years old, has kick return experience, has that 3-down upside. Similar to Ollie Gordon II, a little high-hipped, which hinders him laterally just a little bit. He's also that high runner, a little bit of a stiff runner, lacks long speed, could run lower behind his pads, which I think would maximize his ability to move piles. Lacks high-end agility to make defenders miss in a phone booth. But overall, I like Caleb Johnson. I don't support Caleb Johnson, I think, in the second round, though. Say if the Giants did trade down and they got like the 42nd pick or something like that, I don't know if I'd want Caleb Johnson there. If the Giants are going to take a running back in the second round, I'd much rather that be Omarion Hampton. I don't think he'd be there, to be honest with you. In 34, I wouldn't love that really, but those are the types of backs. Whereas Caleb Johnson, that's somebody I would want a little bit later. But this is the thing. Liddell Betts was the Iowa running back coach last year. He's the Giants running back coach right now. So that could be a connection that the Giants make. And I think he's a good player, so I would invite him in. But there's other running backs I like more than Caleb Johnson.
I really like the Betts call you made because I also have a quote that Liddell Betts from Dane Brugler. He said, Johnson sets the example for the offense in terms of how to work, how to go about your business every day. Clearly, he's somebody who made a strong impression on Betts. That could be a big thing, Nick. That could be a key to what the Giants are doing. And if they draft him, they believe that he can be something in their system. He was number 2 in college football with 21 carries of 20-plus yards, so he can get those doubles. The issue with him is, can he get anything more than doubles at the NFL level? He showed up to his pro day 10 pounds heavier than the combine, Nick. What does that tell me? It tells me that he dropped a lot of weight to try to run the 40, and then he still ran a really poor 40 at the combine. I don't think that deep speed, it looks that way. So at times against the Big Ten, I always talk about this. Make sure when you're evaluating Big Ten players, I talk about this with John Michael Schmitz, you understand the difference between speed at Big Ten level versus the NFL level, but he's also consistently creating yards after contact, 1,060 yards after contact last year. That's insane. He says he models his game after Derrick Henry. I think you can see that. He processes well. He's light on his feet. No fumbles in 2024. Like you talked about the pass protection as well. Something Brugler noted, which I thought was really interesting, 8.3 yards per carry in the fourth quarter of 2024, one of the highest in the class, like shows that he can grind you out, and he is a finisher type of back, which they love, the Giants. So I wouldn't mind this player if they trade back and get him like mid round 2, if they pick up a second round or round 2 pick here. I know he doesn't maybe fit the system best, but I think he's got some damn upside as just an absolute beast at the NFL level. Not a home run guy. He'll never be that for you, but I don't care about home runs. I've always talked about 40-yard dash is the most overrated thing for running backs. I would love guys who can get doubles. So that's the last running back they brought in, Nick. They brought in Travis Hunter. We won't talk about him. We've talked enough about Travis Hunter. They also brought in another wide receiver, and he is somebody who may be a multi-position guy or just a gadget type player. Savion Williams out of TCU, 6'3", 222 pounds, massive human being, 4'9", quarterback in high school, set personal best for the 22.7 200-yard meter, obviously has speed, insane frame, made the Bruce Feldman freaks list, played 46 snaps at Wildcat quarterback last year for TCU, 40 missed tackles on 111 touches last year. Just an absolute freak. Been compared to Cordarrelle Patterson. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about Savion. The guy's just raw, right? Like watching Jack Besh, who was also at TCU, and then Savion Williams, you could see why you appreciate a player like Jack Besh. But then when you look at a Savion Williams, he's been compared to like a Cordarrelle Patterson, as you said, 6'4", 225 pounds. I can see that. You need a plan for him. I think he fits in with what the Giants want, though, because he wouldn't have to play in 11 personnel packages. You can develop that plan and get him up to speed on how to run routes and how to be where he needs to be in certain progressions and actually make him a wide receiver in this insane frame. And that's what a player like Savion Williams needs. This guy's an elite jump ball threat, right? Contested catches. I think he caught like 75% of his contested catches through 5 seasons. Caught 8 of 9 contested catches in 2024. The guy climbs a ladder and he goes and he gets the damn football. And as I just said, don't need to rely on him. Don't need to put too much on his plate. So if this guy's around in the mid rounds, I can see why Shane and Dable would want to bring him in, because there's a ton of upside that is untapped with this specific player, Savion Williams out of TCU.
I like it, Nick. I personally am hoping they pass on this player. Just not a gamble that I want to make with where I think he'll go, unless it's, day 3, then I'm open to it. Anywhere on day 2, I'm completely out on this player. Most of his targets, 73.3% around the line of scrimmage. I don't love that, but I think maybe, you bank on, can he become a better player at the NFL level? Maybe, but I don't love that he only had one 100-yard game in his career.
Look, this is the type of player where it's like, run down the field, we're going to throw the football to you, or we're going to design plays near the line of scrimmage for
right.
you. Because similar to a player like Jalen Hyatt right now, you can't fully trust him to be where he has to be because he's not fully polished and nuanced as a route runner, or understands where he has to be in the context of the offense against specific defenses. That's where it's like, hey, you're not going to start, but we'll have like 5 plays for you a game, packaged plays specifically for you because he is such a rare athlete and a rare weapon.
Sure. And, the hope is that they can develop him. He's just, I'd rather that gamble on day 3. I've seen them do this before, and it hasn't really worked out the way we wanted with Hyatt or really Wan'Dale Robinson in that regard from a value standpoint. We got to the next player they brought in on the offense side of the ball, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, 6'5", 254. He had 34.3% of his catches for 20 yards or more in 2024, an insane percentage. That, for example, and this is context that I got this from Brugler, Brock Bowers at 23.2%, and that's Brock Bowers. I mean, this is a player who was vertical threat, who was a big play threat for them, and so just an interesting prospect the Giants could potentially use. He was a team captain for 4 games as well. What are your thoughts on a player like Elijah Arroyo, and where would you even consider playing him?
I love Elijah Arroyo, but this is somebody with 2 torn ACLs. I could see him going in the first round. Like, people are like, oh man, maybe we can get him at 65. I think this is a mismatch. Yeah, I think this is a mismatch nightmare. I think this is a player that's going to be a surprise, possible first-round pick if that left knee checks out, because, it's 12 personnel, but it's really 11 personnel.
Right.
And look, he tries hard as a blocker. He's not going to be this dominating blocker. That's not necessarily his game, because he is who he is. He's a long strider, insanely controlled athlete. I think he hit a 21.8 miles per hour in 2024. Yeah, that's crazy. Somebody who's going to split the seam, 6'5", 250 pounds. 33-inch arms, massive catch radius, massive hands, graceful with his hands as well, like very good hands. I think he only had one career drop, big play threat. 34.3% of his catches went for 20 plus yards. And that's what the Giants are trying to do. If you look at the Giants offseason, it's, hey, we're going to create damn explosive plays. They bring in Russell Wilson, they bring in Jameis Winston, they have Malik Neighbors. If they added somebody like Elijah Arroyo, that tends to coincide with what the Giants want to do offensively if we believe they're really trying to add that another explosive element to their offense. So I do like Elijah Arroyo. I just think they would have to get him at 34, and even then that might be a little bit lucky.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, if that's the case, it's a big
Again, the injury could throw that off though.
Sure, and then that would maybe drop him more, but even so, I would find that to be a really big gamble to take because, look, he only has 46 catches over 4 seasons. Similar, I think, to, I think they're always looking for weapons that can add explosion to the offense, which is why they're looking at, but maybe they're looking at guys like him and Savion Williams like, wow, the production isn't there. Are we missing something, or is there a reason why? Let's find that out by bringing them in. I think that could be the case, but as far as like the per touch production, it's crazy. He led all tight ends 9.1 yards after the catch per reception. We talked about the big plays of 20 plus yards, fluid mover, looks good on tape. Somebody who you're betting on trades with him, and it's okay to bet on trades with him because you can totally understand why. 51.6% of his snaps in the slot, only 39.4% in line, though he did put on 35 pounds of weight at Miami. He came in at 220. I thought that was really interesting. Still moves well at that size. I honestly wonder, Nick, what would have happened to him if he stayed at 220 and just tried to be a weapon as a big slot, like how good it could have gotten for him. I think that almost ultimately would have been better for him and his trajectory than being kind of like this sort of tight end that he is. Reminds me in some ways of like what Evan Ingram looked like to me at Ole Miss when I watched him back in the day. All right. 2 more players on the offensive side of the ball we're going to wrap up with. Both very interesting players that I'm personally both interested in. The first is Donovan Jackson, the offensive lineman out of Ohio State, 6'3 and a half, 317, 33 and a half inch arms, played guard for them, came in as a guard, is expected to play guard in the NFL, but then had to play left tackle last year when Simmons got hurt and played pretty damn well at left tackle. So only 2 penalties over his final 28 games. He's played 53 games, 3.85 GPA, highest on the team. He was called the toughest tackle that he was faced by Texas's Barron Searle because of his preparation. So that goes to the GPA. He really works hard to be a great player. What are your thoughts on this player?
Highly intelligent, very strong interior offensive lineman who, as you said, stepped in when Josh Simmons went down and helped the Buckeyes win a national championship. But he is a left guard by trade, sports heavy hands, good overall run blocker, frames his assignments well, doesn't really get over his skis too frequently, delivers good power at the point of contact. I think his hands and his feet aren't always the most efficient. They need a little bit of refinement, but overall, this is a sufficient athlete, somebody who's maybe not the most explosive, but doesn't need to be because he understands angles. He understands where he has to be, understands how to attack certain defensive linemen. He varies them up as well, his approach when he is attacking. Anybody who can be a left guard and then step in and play left tackle and then help your team win a national, that speaks to the overall character and the preparation of this player. He's a consummate professional from everything that you hear about him. So I really appreciate him, just like I appreciate Tyler Booker from Alabama. And I think both of these guys could be fixtures on the Giants offensive line if the Giants got them at 34.
Yeah, smooth mover, quick player. Ryan Day said he's the most intelligent player, leader and captain of the team. Chip Kelly spoke highly of him as well. This is the type of guy you want, I think, on the offensive line. I don't think you'll have any chance to get him outside of 35 or even in consideration. I think he'll be off the board before 35, personally.
Yeah,
I know the Niners brought him in for a pre-draft visit, and they have a pick where they might take him. But he's somebody who I think, Nick, and we said this about Booker, you'd be happy if they took him at 34, right?
Yeah, I'd be fine with taking him or Tyler Booker at 34.
Yeah.
Beef up the trenches, baby.
Agreed. And we might not need him, quote unquote, right now, but that's not how it works with the offensive line. Get good guys when you can get them. So I'm definitely very, very interested in to take him. And the final guy that they brought in for a pre-draft visit on the offensive side of the ball, we haven't talked about a lot. And I finally started watching some cut-ups of him, and he is really, really intriguing player. I'm very excited about. It's Marcus Mbow, the offensive lineman out of Purdue, 6'4" at 302, just 32-inch arms, 80-inch wingspan. But man, does he move really well. I always talk about what am I looking for these days on offensive linemen after missing on Evan Neal. I want to see that lower half. Are you fluid in the lower half, and do your feet move well? This guy has some of the best, the most fluid moving feet that I've seen in the class. Almost looks at times like you're just watching somebody who's a lot I guess, skinnier than 300 or less weight than 300 pounds, moving and how smooth he is and how fluid he is. I really, really like him. I want to get your thoughts on him. He started 18 games at right tackle, Nick, and 14 at right guard.
Undersized offensive lineman with short arms, but he overcomes those physical deficiencies with overall intelligence. If you just watch him, you'll know what I mean. He's a very smart player, athleticism and competitive toughness. Now he is, look, I think I have in my profile feather feet. Very light on his feet, very active feet, is always mirroring and matching what defenders are doing and staying in front of them and being annoying. Lightning quick jump set and vertical set, has those hands active and ready, and those hands are also very heavy, especially when he's going forward into contact as a run blocker. Quickly fires out of his stance. I think he's a good overall run blocker. I think he's a good overall pass protector as well. This is somebody who, if he is available at 65 and the Giants go defense, and you want to add another element to your offensive line, take Marcus Membo at 65 and you will not be disappointed.
I'm with you on that because I think he has that demeanor in the run game, despite not having maybe the size that you're hoping for there and the arm length. But, somebody
big hands though, dude.
Big hands. And somebody, a player who he was compared to that really stands out to me, because this is a player who I knew was going to be a draft steal, and he kept falling and falling and falling. Yeah, let me just finish. Yeah, Zach Tom. And
dude,
I didn't make this comp.
Oh,
yeah, this is you.
Yeah.
I didn't make this comp. Somebody made this. I read it and I was like, this is exactly the same comp. And Zach Tom stupidly fell to day 3 of the draft. The Packers smartly drafted him out of Wake Forest, and he's been one of the best draft hits at offensive line in the last 2 decades from a value standpoint. You don't get starting offensive linemen as good as Zach Tom in the second round, the top 30 sometimes. You don't even get it in round 3, and they got him in round 4. And so,
yes, and similar to Zach Tom, one of the reasons why you're a little concerned is the anchor, right? Because he doesn't have a lot of sand in his pants, right? Now, he didn't get bullied and bitched too much, but you could see how a good power rusher like a Cam Jordan in his prime would give a guy like Marcus Membo some problems.
Exactly. So yeah, Marcus Membo, a player who I'd be really interested in at 65. I think it's possible, like Zach Tom, he can fall to 99. It's just how the NFL works with short arm guys who, like we said, don't fit the requirements of arm length and wingspan. And so if he's there and he keeps falling, man, at 99, that's like one of my best picks. And we'll see when we do the mock draft simulators in a couple of days, Nick, where we're at and where we can get these players. He's someone who'll be on my radar with every one of those picks on day 2, and even maybe potentially day 3. All right, those are all the offensive players for the top 30 visit. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit the like button right now, subscribe, get us over 10K, and make sure you leave a comment. Talk about the players you heard. We talked about a lot of running backs today. That was the bulk of this, and quarterbacks. That's where most of these visits have gone. And then 2 playmakers, Savion Williams and Elijah Arroyo, and then 2 offensive linemen in Jackson and in Membo. So that's where we're at. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.